we're going to talk about today is Industry 4.0. You've probably heard it a little bit. What is it? I have one slide, makes it kind of clear. I don't think there's any real confusion. The issue you have is it's coming. Okay, it's like cloud and a few other things. You know, cyber risk, it's coming. So, you know, Harvey asked a question about what is Industry 4.0 and governance. Well, I think really what we're going to talk about today more is how do you survive with this stuff coming in? It's about change management. Now, governance is an element of that, but it's coming. And I think most of you who have any experience in both IT and OT understand it's two separate castles that don't really want to play with one another. And yet it's going to become critical if you're an IT or a manufacturing professional. And so we're going to go today and talk about what are some of those challenges that you will most likely face in your company and as individuals as this comes running at you. Because you're going to see it coming running at you from the IT side to say, oh, we got to get some of this. This is really good. Read about it in a magazine, and there's some really good shiny objects out there we got to buy. And the manufacturing guys, not in my house. Okay, you're not coming in my house. You're not coming to the door. You're lucky to look at my door. I don't trust you, and you have done nothing but hurt me in the past. So why am I letting you in today? So we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, some of those challenges. And we'll go through a little bit, but this is a reasonably small crowd here. So at any point in time, we're going to leave up, there's a slide with the 9 elements of Industry 4.0, but I want to be an educational opportunity for you, okay? I have a lot of experience, it's what happens with the gray hair and all that, in this manufacturing Industry 4.0 stuff, okay? Pretty much I've done all that stuff. And I've been responsible for both the IT and the OT side. Now, I was blessed because I did have responsibility for both. So it made it a little easier. That's pretty rare. Typically, there's a VP of manufacturing and a VP of IT, and they get along at the top, but it's more of like, let's go smoke a cigar and drink some wine versus really talk about what each other does. So you guys have to deal with that issue unless you're one of those two people. And if you are one of those two at the top, you should do more than smoke cigars and drink wine. So hopefully that's what you're going to hear today. But I really want you to feel, really at any time, we got a small crowd here. It's not like we have 5,000 people. Raise your hand. I'll be able to see you. And I want you to get something out of today's presentation. So we're going to start with Harvey, talk a little bit about what Industry 4.0 is. Then he's going to interview me a little bit to start the conversation. But anytime, we really would hope, you know, you're going to raise your hand and be part of the conversation. Thanks. Harvey.
Thank you, Clif. Often referred to as the fourth industrial revolution, is commonly defined as the integration of digital technologies with manufacturing processes. It emphasizes the use of smart technology, data exchange, and automation in factories and supply chains. Components of Industry 4.0. I'm going to read the large print. You guys read the small print. Internet of Things, IoT, which is in a lot of different modes of business. It's even in the healthcare. Big data and analytics, almost everywhere. AI, machine learning. Cyber physical systems, integration of physical processes with computer-based algorithms enabling real-time monitoring and control. Cloud computing. Additive manufacturing. Augmented reality and virtual reality. Smart manufacturing. Supply chain integration. Here are the components. We're going to come back to this slide later when we start getting into this. And I think we're going to level set for a few minutes. I know we are. And then we'll start taking the questions. Clif said anytime. So, Clif, some questions are, what are the biggest organizational challenges from your perspective and your experience?
So I think there's, the number one is trust. Neither trusts the other. And the second big reason and the big problem, why don't they trust you? You don't have the skills of the other. So, you have a lot of nice IT guys. They'll tell you all about coding and SAP and Oracle and databases and blah, blah, blah. And they love TCP/IP. But OT is different. Okay, if you can't talk about a controller and serial communications and technology that may be as old as 50 years, not a surprise, who is not going to take all this wonderful patching stuff you guys all want to throw at it, and they have special components built into the motherboard to control the units. They need role-based access control, not all this wonderful two-factor stuff, if people get killed with that. Okay, so you got to really start proving to the other you have an appreciation. Now, this is really more on the IT side. IT has to prove they understand OT. Honestly, I think this is not chicken and egg and who goes first. No, I believe IT needs to demonstrate they understand OT. And my recommendation is if you haven't hired a manufacturing engineer onto your team, you're just fighting a losing battle. Go hire a manufacturing engineer from your own company. Go find the guy. There's somebody over there, some guy or gal who's manufacturing engineering, who is progressive and sees that this IT stuff's coming and wants to be a change agent and part of it. Go recruit them, give them a raise, promote them, whatever it is, bait them over, get them on your team. Because without him or her, it's going to be tough, okay, unless you personally have incredible experience, okay? But even if you do have, you need somebody else, okay? You need a team, more than one. And then you need to be able to go into a meeting and hold your own. And ideally, if you could, if you're the IT team, recruit someone who you think is better than anybody on the OT team, okay? You got to get credibility. So whoever you hire or get needs to have credentials. And I mean credentials is not all the badge collecting like our cybersecurity guys do, but actually have done real work, okay? And can talk about their experience, particularly with the controls equipment that they have in OT. So you need to find out what kind of controls you have in your company, because they're not going anywhere. They're going to be there 20, 30, 40 years. You need someone who knows that stuff, that kind of language, that kind of configuration, that kind of testing, and that kind of networking, because it's all different than the old IT stuff. Okay, now if you're on the IT side, on the manufacturing side, you need to understand how IT is going to hurt you, okay? And where you need to connect and where you need to have segregation. Now, the biggest thing is in the network, okay? This flat network between IT and OT is deadly, and that's why they don't trust you, okay? Because you typically have blown them up. You've put in some kind of wonderful configuration change and blew them up. In OT, if the network's working, they're not going to change it for years. This idea like we're going to have a change control on Friday or something, that doesn't exist in OT, okay? They're just not going to change it. Okay, the only thing they're going to do is put a new, better machine in there because that one wore out. But they're not going to change things. And in most cases, they're not even using IP to talk to their devices. They're using a serial connection. They're using a piece of fiber, a cable, okay? And they're using some highly proprietary protocol from years ago. You need to understand that. The other thing is, don't move too fast, okay? You IT guys are going to have something called a CAB, Change Advisory Board. Manufacturing is going to have something functionally similar. But they may not call it a CAB. They may call it a, management of change, or just a morning meeting, or whatever the hell they call it. But you need to realize, purpose-wise, it's the same. Now, what they're going to look at, most specifically, is the change going to disrupt my manufacturing process? Is it going to create an environmental hazard? Is it going to create a health hazard? Or is there going to be a safety issue as a result of the change? So now, how many times you had that conversation in your IT cab? Okay? You don't talk like that. Well, if you don't talk environmental, health, safety, and manufacturing process in your cab, and they sit in on one because you're, come over and see, it's really good. Okay, conversation's over again. Okay, the walls are going back up because you don't get my culture. Okay? Manufacturing is a different culture than IT. And many of you work globally, you understand we have different cultures. They're all good. They're just different. But if you don't respect the difference, you're not going to be as effective as you can. So number one here is understand there's two castles. Learn of the other castle. I'm telling you, there's a lot of good things IT can bring to manufacturing if it's done right and you have the right team partner. You will not be as competitive without IT. Okay, it's just not possible. It's where the technology is going. There's some really good stuff, but IT can hurt you. Another big one where they can hurt you is Active Directory. Okay, IT can't live without Active Directory.
Okay.
And you good? Okay, we're back. I got a good guy over here. This is an OT thing. So anyway, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, we'll go to the next thing. Next question. Any questions on this before we go to the next question? I covered a
Go
lot.
ahead and ask your questions.
What? Oh, Active Directory. Yeah, so Active Directory is about access to systems, okay? Guess what? Most of the OT systems don't have access control granularity, okay? Most systems in manufacturing, the legacy ones, have no idea what Active Directory is. And most systems don't want to be connected to a network, but want it in an isolation zone. So they're going to go like, I don't hear about this Active Directory stuff, okay? And your changes could blow up my system, so I don't want to play. So if you are in Active Directory architectures, you need to put manufacturing in its own forest and manage that forest completely separate from your IT systems. And even in your plant, you need to segregate the plant floor from the back office. And they should be physically isolated. And if you got to connect them, I don't know how many of you guys are techies at all, but there's something called a data diode. It basically is kind of like a firewall that allows communication only go one way. Typically, it's all right to have manufacturing send data out, just don't let anything in. So, and use a data diode to push because management says, hey, I got to see what you produced or blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. We'll push it out through a data diode, typically to a DMZ, and then you're going to put it on a file server, and then you're going to do a secure FTPS or FTP to some IT system. If you don't have a DMZ, you don't have a data diode, these are things you might want to consider because you're putting the plant at risk. And if you explain it to manufacturing, I had this conversation just the other day. I explained to them what Active Directory is and why they should care, okay? Because they need to understand anything that could hurt them. Delaney?
Purdue model?
Yeah, the Purdue model, so the firewall, the DMZ is 3.5. And it's 3.5 and above where you really get the prop. But if you don't have a 3.5 layer, which is the DMZ, say again? The data diode? Yeah, data diode would be probably in that 3.5 area for pushing it out. But again, the key is I don't want to get into all the architecture stuff. I'm just talking about what are some of the big topics if you've not heard about, you might want to learn more about and be sensitive. The Purdue model that Eleni's talking about is an architectural model that the control guys like to talk about. You don't hear about the Purdue model in traditional IT. We like to talk about the, ISO 7-layer model or some other crazy model. They don't care about that one. Okay, so if you're on the manufacturing, I wouldn't get too excited about the IT stuff, bunch of gobbledygook over there. But if you're an IT guy, you should go learn about maybe the Purdue model. Okay.
Here, let me bring this to you. Go ahead.
The new folks, they don't know any idea of what serial communication is.
No, I totally appreciate it. That's why I'm saying you need to go grab an ME, manufacturing engineer, and bring him into your shop to lead the conversation, to lead the relationship, and mentor the IT.
How do you break that barrier? Because some folks are not up for that.
There's never somebody who knows it.
They don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. So I've been tasked to go get OT stuff. Well, I know when we bought the company, go stay away from my chest.
Yeah, but if you're, let's say you're a manufacturing engineer, okay, because this has always happened every organization I've been. It's not hard to go grab this young manufacturing engineer who sees Industry 4.0 coming out. Okay, and this is an opportunity for them to learn more about the IT Industry 4.0 relationship with manufacturing and distinguish themselves as a leader in Industry 4.0 thought. Because a traditional manufacturing engineer is not going to get this exposure. Okay, so you have to entice them about how this would be of great career value to do that. Likewise, if you're an IT professional and you know how to work with the OT world, which is far bigger than the IT world, okay, it makes you more valuable. I mean, how many people in the room have worked both sides of the fence? Okay, I would say it's a relative minority. And being in the minority is a good thing in this sense because you can generally get paid more because you're a valuable, high demand asset. And in the future, as I told you, Industry 4.0 is coming and there are very few people ready to lead or operate in the environment. They live in one castle or the other, and we need somebody who can live between them and across them. Okay, other questions? Okay, next question, Harvey.
Yep, I got it there. Before we go there, Clif, I'd like for you to elaborate a little bit. You alluded to this. So basically, you said that while what's it called? IT deficit. You don't want a deficit in IT in terms of you don't want to be too far back in terms of your iterations of software. But in the OT world, like you said, they can live with it.
Well, I don't know if they can live it forever, but they tend to have more mitigating controls. Okay, in IT, we're talking everything. In OT, they tend to live in a more predefined community of devices. Okay, so in IT, we tend to do more blacklist type security, where we say don't talk to the bad guys. In OT, we tend to try to do more whitelist, where we're only authorizing this device to talk to this device in this protocol to this application port. You can go really refined, and it might not change for 50 years, okay? Plus, they're doing serial cable, which is, remember when the kids, we were young, I don't know if you're how long they still do this, but take two cans, put a string before, and you can kind of make it a walkie-talkie. Okay, that's kind of how manufacturing stuff works. They got a string between two devices, and only those two devices can talk on that string. Okay, so they have a lot of mitigating controls. You can't listen to it. There's no internet connection. They have physical controls. I mean, you can't even get in the building or to that section of the plant. They have a lot more mitigating controls they can mitigate the risks you have in traditional IT. And again, if you're in IT, you need to understand and ask about mitigating controls if you're in the cyber side of the fence, or just the IT. So that's just really important to understand. It's different. They move to whitelist. And so some of these things like, hey, I want to do behavioral analytics, and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, that's really cool, but you really can't even figure out how to collect it, okay? Most of these systems collect behavioral analytics through monitoring network traffic, or they put an agent on the server. And I'm telling you, that is not happening in the OT world. And there's nothing to listen to on the manufacturing plant floor. And plus, often it's a unique protocol going back and forth, and it's the same message. I mean, it's just really simple. And the devices are so stupid. I mean, it's a thermometer that says it's 72 degrees. That's all it does. There's no real operating system on that thing to, insert malware. There's no memory to hold it. There's nothing. It's like hard-coded on a chip. So it's a different world. You got to appreciate it. And you have to come in and ask about mitigating controls. And there's some things, okay, they're going to have a Windows machine. You go, oh, Windows got all these vulnerabilities. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay, strip out all the junk, okay, that can cause risk, and then don't let it talk to anything. If it's running all by itself, because the only thing it usually talks to is a control card. Okay, they put some special card that says, hey, raise the bar, lower the bar, turn on the machine, turn off the machine. And then there are tools to lock up the operating system, even the Windows stuff. Like we found things that made it required a multi-factor authentication to make a privilege access change to the operation configuration. And then you can put in, if you really want to think there is a risk. I don't know if you ever heard of watchdog processors or watchdog processes, but basically you take a second independent architecture and you watch the first for variations in behavior. Okay. But most often, your number one security in OT is isolation. Okay. It worked in IT, but IT generally can't get away with this isolation thing. OT can. And they can get away with very tightly, well-defined communities. And you just need to make sure that they haven't, what I see OT do wrong most often is they create backdoors. They'll put a modem into the server with like no control on. Okay, that's out of ignorance, but you can tell them what the right way to do that is. And that's back to the 3.5, go through a DMZ. There's ways to do it. Just tell them, look, this is just silly. And I've gone into places that just would scare you, who have this crazy modem. And I go, well, why do you got the modem? Well, I outsource control support and they need to dial in. Are they dialing in right now? No. So why is it connected? Can't we just disconnect it? And then if we get a change control that says they need to talk to, plug it in just for that period. And then when they're done, unplug it. This whole strategy of isolation, let's practice it everywhere, including that crazy modem, which is highly dangerous. But if you got to have it, at least unplug it when you're not using it. Melvin?
What you talk about with isolation being a primary tool, one of the challenges that are talking about the Purdue reference model is that the granularities can sometimes be very close in OT. So the isolation might be at a network segment level rather than at the device level. There's just too much work to figure out, like this computer is controlling a critical piece of equipment and shouldn't count anything. This other one is feeding data back to management. So the kind of like the Purdue model is that the granularity is so coarse that in specific areas of the
Okay, I agree. His point was isolation can be very granular, and the granularity can vary based on location, plant, and process. Okay, but as a strategy, your number one strategy, I think, should be isolation, and use it wherever it's possible. If you can isolate the plant, isolate the plant. You can isolate this short line or this process or this tool or the maintenance shop or the laboratory. Isolate and put isolation wherever you possibly can. Is it going to be perfect? No. But I can tell you, I've never seen anything more effective than isolation. These shiny objects, really cool and important for IT. OT, basic fundamentals, starting with number one, isolation. And the other one is, need to know, kind of heard that before. Okay. And privilege access management is like, why does he have access to that system if you never use it? Okay. You won't find that in OT. It's a lot easier to do in OT. The biggest issue in OT is third-party control. They put that crazy modem in and aren't managing that third party who's dialing in. That's where almost all the risk is. And this is where IT can be helpful. Okay. That's where to apply IT is access control into OT. Okay. That's where you want to put the multi-factor authentication. That's where you want to put, the endpoint inspection and configuration. This is where you would use something like VDI. This is where you would use things like a data diode, perhaps, depending on what you're using. So it's that DMZ thing is pretty common between IT and OT, and that's where IT should play. They should play mostly in the DMZ and have respect below 3.5.
So, yeah, if there's no other questions, we've got this slide up here. Now, Clif, the big question is why governance and why start with governance?
I don't know about start, okay? I'm just saying it's an imperative, okay? Because these two worlds are colliding, and you need to figure it out. If you just say IT is going to run this, it's not going to happen, okay? Whoever that CIO is probably getting fired, because that is just not going to work. On the OT side, okay, for them to survive productivity goals, quality goals, availability goals, they're going to need some IT stuff, okay? Whether that's for reasons of calibration or, most importantly, order management. As you move into more levels of automation and so forth, if you were in, for example, a GM manufacturing plant, we get an order from like SAP that says, hey, I want a Silverado with these options. It would come in to one of our systems and it would say, okay, we need to have all these parts, and then it would line up our suppliers so that all these parts would be delivered in the right time. And then the plant manufacturing line would know we're about to build a Silverado with these issues and all the automation, and it was just incredible. But it's all orchestrated with IT, but it was more about what we build. We've orchestrated all that as it comes down the line, and then the operators know, my little green light put this part in the machine, and I know how to hook it up, and they do their normal manufacturing. But this is coming together. Auto is a little ahead of the game, but it's coming everywhere. So I don't care what you make, an order's going to come in, and the plant needs to make it. I saw a question back there.
I'll take it back. Hang on a second here. We'll let you.
Hard code credentials, because there's been lots of CVEs with 8.8 scores or higher with hard code credentials. Because manufacturing comes with a lot of hard code credentials.
Well, that's not a good move. Okay, they need to have credentials in the sense of authentication. Okay, that I know it's the device I think I'm talking to, like whether it's a motor or a conveyor or whatever. We need to know.
I think this came out with CVS or 8.8. Manufacturing products not as well.
Yeah, people are putting actually encryption identification chips in the product. I mean, I've worked with a couple companies where we're encoding their authentication right in the device because they don't let them go out the internet to validate that. And it's a machine. But again, it depends where you are architecturally. If you tend to be more of a control unit, you're going to be a little bit more IT-like. If you're a machine, you're going to have authentication, less authorization. Authorization is just going to be a configuration component. And again, usually controlled by whitelisting. Okay, you can't talk to anything else. And we're going to turn off all your other features because we only want you to do 7 things, okay, or 2 or 1. So everything else is going to be turned off. Okay, so for example, if you have a normal server, you have probably, if you're doing it wrong, all your application ports free to your firewall. You can talk to anything they want. Not a good practice if you're an IT person, but if you're in manufacturing, it's an absolute no-no. Okay, it typically is only talking on one port. Okay, and it's only talking one protocol, and it's typically only talking to a very fixed number of specific devices. Okay, and each of them have an IP address and they have a MAC. Okay, and the payload's the same size every time. I mean, you can just tighten that puppy up such that there's no way malware is going to get delivered because it's going to adjust the payload size. It's going to adjust the frequency of the transaction. So if you have a thermometer, it's going to send a specific payload on a specific port and a specific time synchronous frequency and so forth. I mean, the traffic is so wonderful for a security professional compared to IP stuff. But you know what? The manufacturing guy is going to know that, but he's not going to appreciate the value it represents in terms of the security of the system. The other thing is, what you can do as an IT guy, and this is one of the ways I sold security, was if I noticed that the behavior changed, it was out of those kind of controls I talked about, it may not be cyber, it just might be failing. So I could use my cyber controls to improve their plant availability, which is what they get their bonuses for. Okay? Again, at General Motors, I'm just using that as an illustration because I had the job of all this crap. I got the money first. I got it before the car programs. I got it before everything because they're going like, hey, If my plants never go down, they're the cash machines. They're the guys making the money. So yeah, we can build some more cool cars, but if we can't build them, it doesn't make any difference. Okay, our truck plants are generating like $10,000 a minute. So they're going, Cliff, you can keep those plants going. I had plants that never went down and lost a single unit of production in over 7 years. I had a lot of plants like that. That's why they said, give me the money. But at the same time I was doing security, I was creating availability. So don't sell it as security, sell it as availability. Because the plant guys aren't going to go over this security crap. They want to hear about availability.
Yeah.
Productivity, quality.
Yeah, please use this so everybody.
So you mentioned about, I need to reframe my question. OT is realizing that they need to add IT into it.
Yep.
But that's when shadow IT starts getting in. How do you control that?
What was the last part? What gets into it? Shadow IT. This is where if you hire the right person, okay, or the right team who's superior, my experience once again, I hired some really good people, and Shadow IT went out and did their thing, and guess what? It broke. Okay, and when you break something that's generating 10,000 a minute, you don't get to usually keep your job. Okay, so we went out and let go of a few of those people. Okay, we even let go a CEO for that. Okay, because, I'm smarter than the IT guys. They didn't have as good a team. The Shadow IT guy is not necessarily a good IT team. And they will screw up. You just got to make it visible. Okay, and somebody's going to volunteer for you. It's just wonderful to be the sacrificial lamb. Just make sure you maybe sacrifice them. Okay? Now you could sacrifice them by just putting them in a different job. You don't have to let them go. You can find some way to sacrifice them. Just make it public. Okay? And shadow goes away. Okay? I can tell you, I don't remember having a shadow IT problem. I had a few sacrificial lambs show up pretty quick and help me out.
Cliff, any other questions? If not, I have another one.
Yeah.
So let's talk about cloud security, or cloud rather. Cloud is generally considered good to go to look at, but what about it from an OT perspective?
No.
Thank you. Would you care to elaborate?
Okay, that just generally not going to happen, okay? Because it just creates too many risks, okay? If the network goes down, okay, you're going to stop production, forget it, okay? They're just not going to do it. You can do it for the back office IT stuff, that's fine. Like, hey, this is how we get, our order management systems up there in Azure, and it's going to come down the plant. That's fine, okay? But if there's anything in the cloud, again, I'm going to go back to a General Motors story. So we need to know what we should build, right? I queued up at least 1 or 2 or 3 days worth of orders in my plant. So if that shut down, I knew what to build. Another way to do it is most companies have a product that represents a more significant majority of their production than another product. So the policy is, if we lose connection order management system, make more of what we sell most of. Just keep cranking on that stuff. But we're not shutting the plant down, okay? And by the way, that cloud stuff, if you're an IT security person, which you may or may not be, you understand that most cloud who's messing with me? Okay. They're basically buyer beware contracts. They're just saying, hey, we're just selling you some platform to compute on. Now, we'll sell you some really cool security stuff. I don't know if you guys ever looked at Microsoft. Man, they're just really happy to sell you. Like, they must have like 50 wonderful products you could buy. Manufacturing, I'm just telling you, at this moment in time in history, do not talk to them about a plant floor OT system on the cloud. Back office, fine. Plant floor, not happening. Other questions?
Any other questions out there? So I have a theoretical. There it is. I have a theoretical for you. The theoretical is, would you ever run into a situation where a company's OT side, the manufacturing, says,
Don't go in front of the speaker.
go up the other one. All right, well, thank you. Keep me in between the yellow lines. And they're going to...
OT guys really care about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're basically saying, we want to do things our way. You stay out of our area. Then the only thing the other side has, IT has, in terms of working with them, is governance. That's not a bad place to start, is it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
Because I think you got to start with trust.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not going to give you governance because of trust. Okay.
Well, how?
I was in the military. Some of you maybe were also in the military, and we had rank. Okay. And you, as an officer, I was an officer. You're trying to lead enlisted people and junior officers and so forth. And if you were to look at those who make general officer, and I know a lot of general officers, okay, they all led as individuals, not by their stars or their bars, as we often call it, okay? When you start telling people you get to do this because I'm the boss versus this is the right thing to do, it doesn't work well, okay? What you need to do is have people who really understand what right is, regardless of their rank, okay? They should be making decisions because they are the most recognized and trusted person on that decision, okay? That's why, again, where I said open up, trust is the key. Governance is just simply, in my mind, the swim lanes, okay? And ideally, what they trust you to do will become your domain of governance. I have often started with, okay, I worked for the Obama administration, okay? They brought me in to deal with some security issues. And I go, well, I really can't fix security because the IT's so screwed up. Oh, well, why don't you take over the IT stuff? Well, that sounds good. Okay, that sounds good. Then I found out your financial systems are really screwed up and you have no way to manage the money. So, well, then why don't you manage the money? So before I knew it, it was like, then they said, well, Clif, work on this. We got this other problem over here. It was just scary how much stuff was coming. Okay. But why was it coming? Because I was demonstrating competence in a domain and they trusted me. As I said, oh, we'll give you more. And before you know it, life was really good. I could do pretty much whatever I wanted. It was having fun. But that's how you do it. You don't do it because, oh, I'm a senior government official. That's not how I got it. I got it because they say, he seems to know what he's doing. He seems to be able to get the people to do what is right. We're making progress. Let's make more progress. Okay, so that's what I want. So hire the right person. Get the right training. I'm telling you, most plants I've gone to, there's an industrial engineer or a manufacturing engineer that with a little training on some key concepts, like what's whitelisting and blah, 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 you can create that person. You don't even have to hire another one. Just take them, make an investment in training, give them some experience, develop them a little bit, and you'll have a great motivated employee who then you can promote because they've grown their skills and so forth. And people are going, oh, I want to be like Bob. I want to get into this game. I want to get some training. I want to get promoted. People want to do better. People want to contribute. Create those opportunities for them to do it versus just telling people what to do, okay? Getting to tell them what to do like this is a standard, that'll come. But it's not, it shouldn't, don't force it until you've earned trust.
I'm still waiting for Ann to give us a penetrating question, but I might give her a break today. Architectural bodies, architectural standards, IT, does OT have them as well?
Oh, absolutely. They just don't tend to be quite as dynamic. Yeah. Well, because they said, we did it, it's right there, and we're not changing it, so what the hell? Okay, and it's usually more like we picked US Robotics, or we picked Siemens, or whatever. We bought it, and it's not going to be a decision for 40 years, so, why worry about it? And if you want to know what our standard is, look at the wall. It's in 3 cabinets. But it's getting more complex with this, okay? There's more software components coming in. And software bill of material, I don't know how many of you have heard of that, but that's coming at us, and it's going to come in a big play right here, is asset management. Software is an asset in manufacturing now, and we need to ensure the provenance, where did it come from, and the fidelity. Okay, is this the right copy? And then we have a new challenge, which they didn't used to have to deal with, is that's the alignment of configuration. So OT is used to get it set, pay somebody, configure it, and then don't change it. Okay, this is going to force them to make some configuration changes more than every 20, 30 years. Okay, they're not really accustomed to that. And this is where configuration management, like a CMDB, okay, IT is getting a CMDB because they know there's like 1 billion parts out there. OT thinks they didn't need it, but you're going to start seeing CMDB equivalent things come in to not only manage the physical assets, but the software assets. And you're going to see CMDBs start to be more capable of managing soft assets. I work with ServiceNow once in a while, and ServiceNow has already made that move. I mean, and probably if you got a CMDB in manufacturing or your company, you're probably looking, it probably was maybe a ServiceNow, because I think ServiceNow and CA, there's not a whole lot of big players there. Next thing you need to all be considering, whether you're on IT or OT, is the software component, okay? Because again, I've said this before, if you have a personal computer, you probably have virus protection on it, you watch how many files it scans. It's not 17, right? It's hundreds of thousands, if not, north of 1 million, okay? Well, this is just normal, okay? Can you imagine a plant? How many possible pieces of software in there? It's not as bad as an IT environment, but you're going to need a system to manage it, okay? And especially as they start having more software components to do the kind of things I was talking about associated with, say, a manufacturing execution system. But I'll stop there.
So at times, OT and plants, we have another question from Melvin.
So this might be just a different version of the question I asked you earlier. I think in addition to what you're saying, it's aligned with what you're saying is, I think earlier in the OT model was so static that it could be managed as one monolith. And I think so some of the things you're talking about, like AI and predictive intelligence, other things, are highly volatile. Yet there will still be things that are still very static. And so the management of the overall software architecture cannot be as monolithic as it needs to be. It needs to be sort of compartmentalized into places where, you still can manage the way you used to, because all you're doing is collecting sensor readings. And there's this other area which you need to compartmentalize, which there will keep being technology improvements that you need build release management and configuration management and very active management of change. So it makes it, from what I've seen in OT environments, there's a complexity involved in sort of saying, you can't treat this as one huge mess that is all managed uniformly.
Yeah, but I'm going to go back to first principle, isolation, okay? So, for example, AI. If you were to take a look at where would I maybe take AI, it would be in maintenance management and calibration, okay? And use AI for predictive analytics on when I should calibrate, to what degree I should calibrate, when should I perform maintenance, what maintenance schedule should I perform. Man, what a great use. They're going to love it because they're going to save money, they're going to have higher availability. That's how you sell it, right? Now, would I apply it everywhere? No, we're not bringing AI and just trying to find a home for it, okay? They have an issue where they feel like we're spending too much money on maintenance and I'm not sure getting a return. Well, the IT guy goes, or maybe they're the one who brings it forward, like, look, AI can be of great value for predictive analytics on maintenance. Okay, it's a proven technology, you can get return, let's try it there. Okay, one of the places I used it was for defect analysis. So you have most manufacturing, you have a quality process somewhere and you find defects. Well, I've used AI a number of times for defect analysis to figure out what are the correlating factors that's driving the defects. Is it operators? Is it the tools they're using? Is it the design? Is it the tolerances? Is it the jig fixtures? wonderful application of it. So things like AI, and I would say almost every one of these, the way to introduce it is what I call, for example, targeted application. Okay? We don't bring AI to the plant. We talk about solving a problem the plant has, and this just happens to be the tool we're going to use, and start small. So if let's say we did the predictive maintenance as we introduced AI, and you said, man, we just saved them just $1 million, 100,000, depends on the size of the plant, right? They're going to go, hey, IT, other things you could maybe, help me with, as you make it a little better. I'm getting too many penalties on environmental problem because my damn generator out there is leaking oil. Okay. Can you help me with that? I'm telling you, it starts slow. The next thing you know, you're their best friend. I mean, I used to almost get hate mail for not visiting enough. Okay, Clif, why can't you come down? I mean, why are you giving him all the attention? I need more attention over here, because when I would come, I could bring them these kind of IT solutions or process solutions that help them value. So another thing you have is historically in manufacturing, not only do they have a castle between IT and manufacturing plant, most of the manufacturing plants run their own castle. And they don't like to talk and share. Okay, but with IT, you can start being the person who helps share best practices across castles. And then the company figures out, wow, you know what? Being a big company and having lots of plants, we can get more value out of it than having all these independent kingdoms. So again, isolation zones, Melvin talked about a number of them. The more you can do, the more you can isolate them, and then introduce these kind of issues from the lowest risk to the highest risk, kind of prioritize them, and those that can generate the most bottom line or whatever your plant manager is getting measured on, impact how they're getting their bonuses. If you can be seen as driving their bonus to a higher number, they're going to like you. Back here?
Yeah, just a second. Let me bring the mic, and maybe you can say a few words about 3D printing after this, and no more islands, plants or corporate.
I was just going to ask, you mentioned that the different kingdoms don't like to talk. So how do you convince the different kingdoms that they should share their potentially proprietary information that they might feel gives them a competitive advantage in the field?
No, I'm talking about kingdoms within the bigger kingdom. Okay, not necessarily outside your corporation, but like General Motors, I had 600 plants. Okay. And I had plants that were making satellites and batteries and light bulbs and cars and all kinds of ridiculous stuff. But in each of those things, like you're building a satellite, what you focus on is different than you're building a light bulb. And so there were some best practices up there I was able to take over here and here, over there, because they couldn't see it. Okay. But I could see it. And I used my visibility to help them. And then they said, oh, well, this guy's helping me. I think I'll listen to him a little bit more. And we made some big changes. I mean, I saved $100 million in the first 90 days just by kind of looking around. It's unbelievable. But do you think they didn't like the $100 million? Oh yeah, they freaking love that. Okay, that helps you make friends. Money helps friends. If you can save them money, create availability, help them with their bonus, they're going to like you. So that's what you need to focus on. Hate to say it, but that's what you got to focus on to get this thing started.
You mentioned tech fairs, or you didn't mention it, but tech fairs come up. Is that where tech fairs come in?
No. Okay. Yeah, to a degree.
Okay.
So another thing I've done multiple times is what I call a tech fair. And so what a tech fair is, we have this new technology we want to introduce, let's say the AI system for maintenance management. So we would have a tech fair, and we would typically bring the vendor who helped us with that, maybe Maximo or something. And we say, okay, let's show it. I'll have a manufacturing person there, an IT person there, and they would co-present this technology and the results they were seeing with it. And we would do that about twice a year. And one time I got called by the CEO and said, Clif, I need you to move your tech fair to next week or a different week, because I want every one of my direct reports at your tech fair. Okay? This was a big event. where we showed basically Industry 4.0 stuff. And we always had a team, an IT person and a manufacturing person demonstrating the technology, and then these plant managers or executives or whatever, they would look at it and go, this is good stuff, you know. I'm willing to take it in there, because not only, some don't want to be the first guinea pig in their mind, right? But to know that it's already running in 2 plants, which maybe they didn't know, and they look at it and go, I have that problem. Can I be next in line to get it? Okay. So communicating, it was almost exactly like what you see out here, except this would just be within my company, and we would have it in two distinct groups. This group would be deployed. This would be the tech fair of the deployed stuff. This is the tech fair of what we're exploring. And then you would get through that tech fair, you'd have maybe another plant manager going, hey, can I be part of that pilot or proof of concept or whatever? Can I get output? This really helped with change management, because they start to feel they're part of it. They've got to feel ownership. That's just a good organizational change management thing. Really important as this comes rolling at you. Well, maybe not this is, but the other stuff. Yeah. I think we're almost out of time.
I think we are. Do you want to say a few words about 3D printing, or go into the initial closing statement up there? Or 3D printing, that's going to be important, is it not? Or is it, as additive manufacturing?
To me, it's another tool.
Okay. One of the 9.
Like DNC. I mean, DNC is pretty cool. Everybody deal with that, direct numerical control cutters. It's amazing to watch that stuff. Like, if you're making a rifle and not having a DNC machine, I don't know how the hell you would do it. I mean, it's just really cool how they cut metal. We had a DNC machine, then we had an electron gun, drilling holes, smaller than a hair follicle. I mean, it's incredible what manufacturing has. I think what you want to do as an IT professional is just show respect for the technology they have. This one, 3D printing kind of feels like an IT thing, right? Okay, it's neat. They got really cool stuff. Okay, you just need to go in. That's their children. So go in there and show respect to all the technologies they have. Okay? The issue you have with this one, this is probably talking to 3D printing to an IT system. So it's a little bit more risk than some of the other machines. So if they introduce it, you got to be real careful on how it's introduced. Back to isolation, this should be isolated. This should be isolated from the plant floor. If they want to have a 3D printing cell, fine. Every one of them should be isolated, not all the 3D printing machines in one space, because this is where IT's coming in. This is a threat, okay? They may want it, but you as an IT professional need to help represent and educate them as a threat. And if you're an IT guy telling manufacturing this is a threat, they're going to show more respect to you, okay? Because you're honest. You're not introducing a known threat and not making it visible, okay? So just a caution. There's a lot of cool technologies coming. Some are good and some are threats, but most important, show respect. I mean, respect's another important thing. Show respect to manufacturing, and their children are often their machines. Okay, these people love their machines. I mean, they've had them for 40 years. Their kids used to work on them. I mean, this is part of the family.
One last question.
Okay.
If not, let's
I'll
give
go
it.
last question here.
So hold on a minute. Hold on half a second. Just a minute, my friend.
So I'm not really familiar with this industry, but I noticed some things being discussed, like microsegmentation. I guess, is there a CIS benchmark equivalent for this industry?
There's a lot, just like everything else, there's a lot of standards. There's standards on architecture, standards on change control, standards on process. There's industry they're ripped with standards, okay? They're not lacking that, okay? But again, it's an important point, because back to cultural awareness, you need to be sensitive to the kind of standards that they live with. I mean, don't be talking about yours over in the IT standpoint. Learn about the standards they have to live with, and the processes that they get measured by, and the regulations they get assessed by, whether it's health, environmental, safety. Those, I'm telling you, three premier. If you're not aware of what's going on in those three categories, again, try to avoid the conversation till you learn. I mean, go learn that stuff before you have a conversation with them, because they're just going to think you're one of those other people and you don't belong in my castle. Okay, so no, I just want to say closing comment. Okay, number one message here is you got to build trust. Don't try to do without trust or you're going to have a problem. Okay, it's another culture. Go learn the culture, and the best way to learn the culture is bring some of that culture into your organization. And I think if you start with that, you'll be able to survive Industry 4.0. You fail to do that, it's going to hit you upside the head. Okay, thank you very much.